This is not Earth, but my world. I have been chosen to be a god of this world, but I might be erased because there are 27 other gods like me. Thus, I need to gain the recognition of the creatures of this world and generate faith. Only if the number of believers increases can I win in this divine selection competition. Otherwise, the only outcome waiting for me is death. Ranking first, a man named Nebula is a top player of a game called The Lost World. In the game, he developed technology and defeated the second-ranked player, Hegemonia, becoming the first to complete all achievements. Just as he was lamenting the boredom of the game, a mysterious email suddenly appeared on his screen. Amazing achievement. So far, you are the only one who has cleared all achievement. Thank you for enjoying Lost World so far. Lost World, which was in early beta access, is now scheduled to be officially released. Player Nebula can enjoy the game before the official service. Would you like to start? Looking at the invitation in front of him, Nebula didn't hesitate and decisively clicked the yes button. But when he opened his eyes again, he found himself in a ruin-like square, which made him very confused. Was he dreaming? At the same time, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Then, a mysterious woman appeared in front of him. She knew all about Nebula. Looking at the puzzled Nebula, the mysterious person signaled him not to be nervous, as he wasn't the only one who had come here. As she slowly raised her hands, a blue planet floated in midair. Could it be Earth? Nebula wondered, but he quickly dismissed the thought, because he had seen the scenery of that continent many times. The game Lost World, and everyone present might become a true god. Lost World is not just a world that exists in the game. This land was abandoned by the gods because of something that happened in the past. On that planet, there once was a splendid civilization where different races lived in harmony. However, for unknown reasons, the gods left it. Now to them, it's time to welcome the new gods. The purpose of creating the game Lost World was to find suitable new candidates for that planet. And its nature is just like the rules in the game. If you work hard to generate faith among the natives, you can become the only god on this planet. And you can do anything you want. All the desires you've ever dreamed of. It is feasible as a god of that world. Hearing this, Nebula felt incredulous. What if I choose to give up? The mysterious person also explained, if you give up now, you will return to your everyday life and lose the memory of this place. Once you join the game, you cannot quit, and there are only two outcomes: disappear or become a god of that world. After explaining the rules, the mysterious person announced that anyone wishing to give up must do so now. Then, the mysterious person took out strange cards. This is just like the Lost World. Choose a small area to start your game. Nebula realized it really was just like the game. However, he couldn't help but wonder if others were already giving up. He began counting the number of people present. 1, 2, 3. Soon, the count had dwindled to 27. Nebula guessed that they were inviting candidates according to the game's maximum number of players. As the top-ranked player, Nebula was the first to choose a card. Upon receiving the card, he was also teleported to the starting area of the game. However, he was very frustrated, not expecting that being the first to draw a card, his luck would be so bad. It turned out that he drew the area with the lowest win rate, a small insect region, and he could only control creatures of the insect type. It's unfortunate, but also fortunate, because this location is in a remote area on the eastern part of the continent, which means there are few wars here, allowing him enough time to develop. In this sense, relying on insects would be a good starting line, such as against those frogmen. But what troubled him was the number of tribes. As a starting tribe, it is not easy to develop faith, especially facing a number of 500 frogmen, and his initial faith value was only 10 points, which had no effect on these well-fed frogmen at all. Therefore, he had to find a new target. Soon, he discovered some lizardmen. They also feed on insects and can survive here even without water. After careful observation by Nebula, a young, severely injured lizardman caught his attention. These lizardmen were a primitive tribe, and this young lizardman was likely ousted in a power struggle. The more he felt abandoned by this world, the more he yearned to change his destiny. Well then, let's start with him. In this desolate area, trees are already a scarce resource, let alone food. But just then, the lizardmen suddenly became very excited, because they found an injured antelope. The young and strong lizardmen rushed over first, while the old, weak, and sick could only wait for them to finish eating, getting a small portion of the remaining bones. However, some lizardmen believed that food should not be shared with those tribe members who were about to die. It turned out that they had previously encountered a saber-toothed tiger. Rakrak was severely injured while protecting the tribe, so some tribe members believed that he should not be abandoned. The scene shifts, and night falls. At this moment, all the lizardmen were resting, but just then, Rakrak was awakened by a sound. When he saw the source of the noise, it was a butterfly, which he found very strange. He felt as if something was calling him, so he immediately followed. When Rakrak reached the summit, he found beetles piled up like a mountain. He looked incredulously at everything before him, thinking, could this be a miracle? After receiving this gift of food, Nebula successfully won the faith of the lizardmen. Because these beetles became their hope for salvation, he took this opportunity to prepare for the next step of his plan. Meanwhile, the lizardmen tribe had concluded this was divine guidance and began calling him the nameless beetle god. After acquiring so much resource for the tribe, Rakrak's status among his people was elevated. At this time, he saw the butterfly's guidance again. However, when the other tribespeople learned that the butterfly was guiding them toward the cold lands, they hesitated and tried to persuade Rakrak to try another direction. But Rakrak insisted on following the butterfly's guidance. He believed that aimlessly searching in the wilderness was futile, and it was better to trust in divine guidance. Meanwhile, Nebula observed silently from behind. He knew that the Lizardmen still lacked enough faith, so he could not directly interfere with their decisions. If they believe in me, they will experience a future beyond their imagination, Nebula thought. Rakrak followed the butterfly's guidance and soon discovered a desert oasis. He was convinced that the nameless beetle god had led them to a sacred place. At the same time, Nebula's divinity level was elevated. The small area's bug level was raised to level 2, and he received the blessing of bugs, which significantly enhanced Rakrak's abilities. Rakrak, do you want to know what I want? Then deliver my will to your people. This blessing will help you. The scene shifts, and night falls. By then, the upgraded Nebula had gained the ability to enter their dreams. He needed Rakrak's help to craft an image of a god. Then, an image of a buffalo's skull appeared in his dream. This was the appearance of the nameless beetle god. The next morning, Rakrak announced to his people what he had dreamed last night. They needed to hunt a wild buffalo and use its bones to create the image of the nameless beetle god. However, the tribespeople seemed to disagree with his approach, as the buffalo herd was too dangerous for them. Rakrak understood everyone's concerns but still firmly believed in his idea and decided to go alone to complete the task. The tribespeople were all incredulous, but Rakrak reassured them not to worry, for he had received the god's blessing. Not only had his injuries healed, but his strength had also increased. After speaking, he threw a javelin, which effortlessly pierced a large tree dozens of meters away, shocking everyone. Just then, a herd of buffalo passed by below the mountain. Realizing this was divine guidance, Rakrak charged at the herd alone. With just one spear, he easily hunted a buffalo. Seeing this, the tribespeople came forward to help process the buffalo. By evening, Rakrak had made an image of the nameless beetle god out of buffalo bones and led his people in a sacrificial ceremony to thank the nameless beetle god for his gifts. The nameless beetle god, please accept our offering, no matter how inadequate it may be. Please accept our offering. Although it was a hasty and clumsy ceremony, their sincerity was heartfelt. Nebula's faith value was greatly increased as a result, making him feel that it was all worthwhile. Previously, Nebula had used wild grass to lure the buffalo herd down the mountain to provide resources for them, but what he didn't expect was that they would eat the calves as well. At this stage, it was difficult to expect them to grasp knowledge and skills related to herding. The population support of this oasis was not high, and it could only be maintained for a few years at most. Currently, they had no concept of agriculture or ranching, and the coming times might be very tough. It was simply too difficult for them to grasp certain knowledge on their own. However, due to the rules restrictions, Nebula could not directly tell them the solutions, so he quickly thought of a method, but it would take a long time to implement. The scene shifts to a few days later. One night, Rakrak had a strange dream where he saw the altar shaking, as if hinting that something significant was about to happen. He then climbed up the altar. Under Nebula's guidance, Rakrak's tribe was strengthened. Their skin color evolved from light blue to dark, and Rakrak firmly believed that this was the divine protection and guidance. Just as he felt the altar shake again, he saw the approaching powerful enemy. A tribe was coming in their direction. Judging by their skin color, they were Rakrak's former tribespeople. More importantly, their leader looked very powerful because he was riding a terrifying drake. Looking at their numbers, it seemed that the entire tribe had come, which also meant that their original homeland had been exhausted of resources. Rakrak guessed that they were perhaps just passing through, but since their location required climbing to the mountain's summit to see the full picture, and the patrol team was overly enthusiastic, they prematurely exposed their position. The patrol team also warned them not to pass through this area. The leader did not expect to encounter this kind of unexpected surprise, suggesting that these people were not familiar with the surrounding environment. Rakrak reassured his people not to be nervous, thinking that this might be the arrangement of God. Are you saying this is a test from the god? Rakrak gave a positive answer. He believed this was not only a test but also a mission. Our mission is to accept and save them. After all, they are just like us. Just then, the butterfly appeared again. Is this also the will of God? Although it was hard to guess further, he firmly stated, I will do my best to convey your will. Watching Rakrak's actions, Nebula realized that he had understood his intentions. Rakrak's tribe and the blue-skin tribe must unite to strive for population growth and technological progress. What surprised Nebula was that Rakrak had made this decision on his own, without guidance from dreams. Was it because his willpower was strong enough? It turned out that Rakrak's willpower had reached an astonishing 14 points. Nebula was very reassured. If Rakrak could grow into a leader with a high degree of self-will, he could develop civilization autonomously rather than relying entirely on player control. This way, Nebula could effectively express his intentions. Faced with the patrol's warning, the leader did not take it seriously, instead trying to extract information about the territory from them. Rakrak stepped forward slowly, telling him, here there are water resources and food, and a deity. This is the territory of a nameless beetle god. However, the leader clearly did not understand what he was saying, gestured for them to leave quickly, and and warned, "We have many soldiers. If you are a leader, you should know what to do." Rakrak shook his head helplessly, saying, "I don't want to start a war with you. Those who have lost their homes can embrace the deity, and you will receive the deity's favor." Hearing this, the leader laughed loudly. "You are the one who doesn't know how to scheme." Rakrak was not moved by his mockery, instead firmly saying, "Perhaps you are right, but you do not know the deity." As soon as the words were spoken, the drake launched an attack on Rakrak. Facing this behemoth, Rakrak knew he needed the deity's blessing. At this moment, he was praying, hoping the deity would grant him courage and strength. However, he underestimated the strength of the drake. With just one strike, it broke his spear. The leader then sneered and said, "You can go die now." Nebula silently observed from the side. Just then, a message prompt appeared. Civilization clash. Two different tribes came into contact. Both tribes' experience points increased significantly. This message prompt came just in the nick of time. Area, Lizardman level 1. You've been paying a lot of attention to one tribe. These tribes are now part of your territory. New skills are available. Would you like to use it? Nebula decisively pressed the yes button. Instantly, a beam of light descended from the sky, landing on Rakrak. At the same time, the drake's claws heavily struck towards him. The leader thought Rakrak had been smashed into a pancake, but to his surprise, he hit nothing. Blessed Rakrak felt an unprecedented strength. The leader sneered, saying, "I don't know how you dodged that, but you won't escape a second time." At this moment, Rakrak felt no fear. He knew that even without divine power, he had the confidence to deal with the leader. However, the biggest threat at the moment was the drake. The drake's strength value was 87 points, while Rakrak's strength was only 30 points, with an additional 30 added. But with the blessing of the enhanced physical strength skill, his strength had significantly increased. The divine power boost increased the maximum power of ordinary strength by 200 times. Simply put, Rakrak's strength had now reached 630 points, far surpassing that of the drake. This vast disparity in strength left everyone shocked and awed. Rakrak defeated the drake with just one strike, and everyone realized that no one could do this except those blessed by the deity. However, the leader still seemed unconvinced. He picked up a short sword from the ground and attacked Rakrak. Faced with the leader's stubbornness, Rakrak did not hesitate to give him a heavy slap, sending him to his knees, unresponsive. "Who's next?" Seeing this, the others laid down their weapons and surrendered. Just then, the blessing's duration also came to an end. Rakrak looked at his body, feeling incredulous. It was as if a deity had possessed me just now. Nebula, watching Rakrak's performance, was also very satisfied. The scene shifts, and night falls. Rakrak sat by the campfire, pondering what path to take next. Since the number of new joiners was 6 times that of their original tribe, he realized that the small oasis could not sustain so many people. Therefore, they must venture out to breed a stronger civilization. After experiencing a nomadic life, Rakrak understood that without a steady supply of resources, this oasis could not last long. To ensure the continued development of civilization, they must find new paths for development. The integration with another tribe also made Rakrak realize that this brought him many different talents. The next day, Rakrak found a blacksmith who knew how to make iron tools and asked him about the conditions and materials needed to make weapons. The blacksmith told him, "If it weren't for the leader's stubbornness, I could have made better tools long ago." He explained that making iron tools required a lot of wood to burn special fuels. Rakrak looked at the short sword in his hand, thoughtful. Good tools can not only improve hunting efficiency but also enhance the tribe's overall combat capability. He said to the blacksmith, "I will consider it and give you an answer tomorrow." After the blacksmith left, a one-armed lizard man walked in. It turned out he had heard that Rakrak was looking for a guide and decided to offer his help voluntarily. Rakrak then asked the question, "You must have been wandering, right?" The one-armed man smiled and nodded, saying, "Yes, this is an old body that wanders around, just looking for a place that will accept it." He said that through this process, he had learned how to discern directions. Hearing this, Rakrak became very curious. "What makes you so confident?" The one-armed man looked up at the sky, then pointed upwards. "My answer is up there." Time passed, and before they knew it, it was late at night. Rakrak also looked up, guessing the answer was the stars. The one-armed man confirmed his guess. Although he was not sure if the stars really moved, he could tell directions by the stars. If you know the path of the stars, you won't easily lose your way. Looking at the vast starry sky, Rakrak felt immensely awestruck. The one-armed man decided to teach him how to identify positions by the stars. In the one-armed man's understanding, the stars do move and change with the seasons. The one-armed man told Rakrak, "Then I will check again at the same time tomorrow." After the one-armed man left, a guard responsible for watching the drake found Rakrak. After feeding it today, it has become much more docile. It turned out that before this, the drake was very aggressive towards anyone, and the guard could do nothing about it. But after Rakrak appeared, the situation with the drake changed dramatically. When the drake saw Rakrak, it actually trembled with a fear that came from deep within, making every one of its movements cautious. The drake ate the food provided by Rakrak. At the same time, Rakrak signaled to it to be quieter in the future. Afterward, Manon indeed became much more docile. Rakrak thought to himself that God kept Manon alive for a reason. They just hadn't discovered it yet. But the guard came to Rakrak actually for other matters. He said that while feeding Manon at noon, he had an inspiration. Since since we contain powerful creatures like the drake, surely similar creatures can also be tamed. Rakrak encouraged him to express his opinion. The guard then pointed to the herd of wild buffalo below the hill. On the other side, Nebula received a prompt. Rakrak's tribe has noticed skill herding. It is recorded that human history at one point split into two branches. Some humans took charge of agriculture, while others handled livestock. Although this is not truly a primitive society, the game's development direction is consistent with reality. The origins of all major civilizations are in river basins, greatly facilitating agriculture. However, the Lizardman tribe chosen by Nebula is different. They possess strong bodies and a high environmental adaptability, needing more of a pastoral lifestyle rather than mere agriculture. With just a little guidance, their civilization's development speed could be greatly increased. The development of manufacturing gave their progress wings. With Rakrak's support, the blacksmith obtained materials for forging stronger iron tools. Thanks to the blacksmith's efforts, they were finally able to produce basic iron tools. Although these iron tools might still be softer compared to carefully crafted bronze tools, they represent a huge advancement compared to the stone tools previously used by Rakrak's tribe. The emergence of iron tools will provide significant assistance to their development. What Nebula did not expect was that he would gain an unexpected boon: astronomy. Although the current knowledge is still too primitive to be called astronomy, astrology might be a more suitable term for it. However, in the distant future, this discipline will pave the way to change the world. Rakrak looked up at the starry night sky, and he finally understood why the one-armed man said that the stars are the guides of the sky. Although the stars seem unpredictable, they can clearly point the way for the future. After obtaining sharp iron tools, Rakrak decided to gather everyone to express his thoughts. God have brought us to this land for a long time now, even allowing us to meet our former tribespeople. It was God who let us survive, while those driven into the wilderness will die there. But what God wants is salvation, not exclusion. We survive in order to shelter more people, because this is the directive of God. So I have decided, when dawn comes, we will leave this place and seek more resources. Then, Rakrak signaled to the one-armed man to pass on the knowledge of watching the stars to others, and told them about the place they were about to go to. The one-armed man pointed in the direction of the rising sun and said, "After dawn, when the morning sun rises, we will head to the right of the sun and walk for 10 days. Then turn right along the rotten lake and walk for 15 days, and continue through the desolate mountain roads and valley paths for 3 days. Eventually, we will reach our destination, an endless forest with more food and resources. Simply put, it's a good place to live." After the one-armed lizard pointed out the direction, Rakrak went up the altar. Then, he asked Yer why they hadn't eaten the wild buffalo. Faced with Rakrak's inquiry, Yer seemed very puzzled, thinking he had done something wrong. He explained nervously, "I wasn't very hungry at the time. Everyone was busy catching the wild bison, and I didn't eat any." At this moment, Yer seemed somewhat bewildered, because I wasn't thinking much at the time, just that my stomach wasn't hungry. If I had eaten then, I wouldn't know if I could eat it when I was really hungry. That's what I thought. Hearing this, Rakrak affirmed his actions. "Although you really want to eat beef now, you must prepare for the future," he said, and asked Yer if he could persevere. Yer firmly answered, "As long as I don't starve, I am willing to do so." Very well. Then, he decided to entrust everyone with a greater mission. A sharp spear appeared before everyone, and they were all incredibly shocked, because before, even the leaders hardly had such fine weapons. This is a reward for those who can overcome their own appetites. Everyone was very satisfied with his reward, which also made those who had not received a reward think of striving for it. They wanted to do better. At the same time, Rakrak picked up a piece of buffalo bone and wore it on his face. He did this to make his people understand that they bear the responsibility of protecting the tribe, because in this wilderness, dangers are everywhere. Soon, a group of warriors armed with buffalo bones appeared before everyone. Each of them kept the nameless beetle god in their hearts. "The nameless beetle god will be with you." However, at this moment, Rakrak understood that this was not a directive from the god, but his own decision. He knew that if they stayed here, it would only be a few years before they repeated past mistakes. Going out is the only way. Please forgive me, dear nameless beetle god. Nebula knew everything about the Lizardman tribe. He knew that Rakrak would do this, otherwise, he could not have become a priest. Attribute update. Reliability from 4 to 7. Warrior level from 2 to 3. Leadership from 7 to 14. Priest level from 1 to 2. With Nebula's help, Rakrak's abilities were significantly enhanced, nearly doubling in all attributes. So far, you have done well and not disappointed my expectations. From now on, you will be a qualified leader. The scene shifts. A few days later, the Lizardman tribe struggled through the wilderness for 3 days, the intense heat making even the drake struggle to keep up. When the drake lay down tired, everyone came forward to check, and the one-armed man speculated that it was probably too tired. Seeing this, Rakrak signaled everyone to rest in place for a while. At this moment, he was also filled with worry, because the remaining food was running very low. We can only hope for God to perform another miracle. Just then, a tribe member who had gone scouting hurried back, signaling that they had encountered other tribespeople ahead. It was a group of goblins. The goblins left their previous location very happy, because there was a terrifying monster living there. However, when they saw a group of powerful lizard men appear before them, armed with well-made weapons. The goblins were instantly stunned. They immediately dropped their stone tools, chose to surrender, and handed over their remaining food. I think there's been a misunderstanding. We just wanted to leave this canyon as quickly as possible to find some food in the wilderness. Rakrak became curious and asked what forced them to leave their home. The goblin leader pointed to the mountains behind them and said, "We used to live there until a monster suddenly appeared." Rakrak's brow furrowed because the monster seemed to appear in the direction they were about to head. Nebula, seeing all this, also realized that this was indeed a formidable enemy, the giant crustaceans. The giant crustaceans' stats are far superior to those of the Lizardman tribe, and it also possesses two huge venomous fangs. The Lost World describes them as, "These creatures were created by the gods before they vanished. After the gods left, these monsters were left on the planet." Moments later, the goblin leader led Rakrak towards the location of the monster. When Rakrak saw the giant creature with his own eyes, he was shocked. The size of the monster was incredibly large, and just one of its breaths caused the mountain to shake violently. The goblin leader signaled to Rakrak not to be nervous, saying, "This is the sound the monster makes when it sleeps." How many days would it take to detour? At least about 8 days. Hearing this, Rakrak furrowed his brow, lost in thought. Nebula saw his hesitation, which was understandable. Given the tribe members' fear, taking a detour seemed like a safer choice. "What do you plan to do, Rakrak?" Nebula wondered inwardly. Just then, Jael noticed something. She stared at the giant rocks above, and after pondering for a moment, she came up with a plan to kill the monster. Jael signaled to Rakrak, saying, "We must fight. Now we have enough advantage." It turns out, she was inspired by the process of the blacksmith making tools. By optimizing the structure, the blacksmith managed to achieve greater effects while reducing the effort required. "So you mean, if we use this principle, we can easily generate a huge amount of energy? We don't need such complicated tools. Just a few sticks will be enough." The scene shifts. Jael had thought of a method using the principle of the lever, moving a fulcrum to push a massive boulder over the monster, using the rolling stones to crush it. It was a simple yet clever plan, but to kill a crustacean of this level, all the rocks needed to hit simultaneously to increase the likelihood of success. Nebula was also uncertain whether this would be enough to kill the monster. As they moved the lever, the boulders began to roll quickly. By the time the monster noticed something was wrong, the boulders had already reached it, smashing heavily onto its crown. However, 3 boulders were still not enough to kill the monster. They only shattered its shell, further enraging it. Seeing this, Rakrak signaled everyone to speed up and push all the remaining rocks down. But Nebula knew that it might be too late, as ordinary people could not move the boulders quickly enough. In a critical moment, Nebula blessed Rakrak again. In an instant of gaining strength, Rakrak single-handedly pushed a boulder into the air and used his physical strength to throw another rock down. Rakrak understood that the monster might dodge the damage from the boulders, so he decided to actively interfere. He leapt toward the cliff, gathering force, and with his spear aimed precisely at the monster's weak point, he threw it directly. The spear's interference prevented the monster from dodging in time, and the boulder from above hit it squarely. The first boulder incapacitated it for combat, and the second boulder delivered a fatal blow. Nebula was very pleased with Rakrak's performance. The hunt was a huge success. At the same time, a game interface popped up. "Hunting monsters. Your tribe has slain abominations. Ancient crustaceans." The giant crustaceans is an ancient crustacean. With the monster killed, Nebula also received a hunting reward. Nebula obtained the essence of abomination. Each god has resources that adapt to their domain. Although these resources can be created by consuming faith, creating non-existent things often requires special ingredients. Nebula thought, "If I have this core, I can create a creature that acts as a generator of faith resources, spreading the words of the gods through their existence." Additionally, if these creatures are elevated to higher levels, they might gain abilities like those of apostles or avatars. But Nebula was uncertain if this creation method was the same as in previous games. He was also pondering how to handle this inner core. On the other side, Jael was examining the body of the monster in front of her. She pulled off one of the monster's legs and decided to try if its meat was edible. If the monster's meat was edible, it could provide a huge supply for the tribe. After a simple taste test, Jael found that the monster's meat was edible, but it needed some processing because it didn't taste good. Just then, she noticed herbs growing on the rocks. She thought that if she used the herbs to season the meat, it would definitely taste better. After a simple treatment with the herbs, the meat indeed tasted much better, becoming more delicious. During the meal, Jael suddenly asked Rakrak about the matter of an heir. "As the tribe's leader, you should consider finding a mate." Hearing this, Rakrak was stunned because he had never thought about this issue. Seeing him silent, Jael continued to question him. "You are growing old. Isn't this necessary for the stability of the tribe? If you've never really thought about it, then what about me?" Hearing this, Rakrak fell into thought. Just as Rakrak was about to reply, a shining golden light caught his attention. He walked over and found that it was a metal plate inscribed with runes, which seemed to have fallen off the monster's back. At that moment, Yer curiously reached out to touch it and even took a bite directly. The one-armed man immediately stopped him. "You can't eat that." The one-armed man explained that this thing is called gold, which he had seen during his travels. It is said that even after a long time, its color does not change or decay. Would you like to catch an antelope around here instead? Hearing this, Yer immediately shifted his attention, more interested in the delicious antelope meat. Meanwhile, Rak was staring at the gold plate in his hands, lost in thought. Everything in the world will die, decay, or disappear. Nothing is eternal. This metal plate does not rot, which means that the person who made it tried to preserve something on it. The scene shifts to the night. Rak was sitting on a stone, holding the gold plate, still staring at the runes on it. He was sure that these symbols hid important secrets. Just then, a noise nearby caught his attention. He saw a few insects circling above the antelope meat, as if conveying some sort of message. Rak carefully observed the insects' movements and found that their trajectories were very similar to the symbols on the gold plate. Following the insects' hints, he re-engraved those symbols on the soil and soon discovered its secrets. The scene shifts to the morning. Rak shared his discoveries with Jael first thing. He carved two symbols on the soil, one representing male and the other female. Between them, he added a symbol in the shape of a small stream, meaning to become mates. This is my answer. Rak, do you know what this means? Yes, I know. As a result, the Lizardman tribe invented writing and created their own script. These are achievements that typically take generations to accomplish, yet they were achieved in the early stages of the tribe. For Nebula, this was undoubtedly a huge advantage. At this time, the Lizardman tribe was celebrating a festival. On the surface, it seemed like just an ordinary hunting event, but in reality, it was the Lizardman's way of celebrating a wedding. Capturing the largest prey as a gift for a spouse symbolized their strength and loyalty. Nebula looked forward to the future that Rak and Jael as mates would lead the Lizardman tribe towards. The scene shifts to a few days later. After ensuring a supply of food, Rak decided to lead his people out of the forest. He told the goblin leader that the threat had been cleared and they could continue living there. The goblin leader expressed sincere gratitude for Rak's help. Without your help, we might have had to continue wandering in the wilderness. Then, he introduced his child and mentioned that his child was very familiar with the terrain and willing to help Rak navigate. There are many wild animals and traps in the forest. He can help you avoid dangers. The scene shifts. The Lizardman tribe found some strange footprints on the ground along the way. Rak, seeing such marks for the first time, immediately asked the experienced one-armed man, "Do you know what these are?" The one-armed lizard recognized them immediately as frogmen's footprints. He explained that frogmen are an extremely cunning species, with both good and bad among them. Since they came scouting, it means they must have experienced combat. From these footprints, there are at least 5 or more. They must be from a tribe even larger than the Lizardmen. Afterwards, Rak decided to return to the camp first. The first thing he did upon returning to camp was to double the size of the camp area and deploy many more scouts and border guards. While ensuring tasks were assigned, he also emphasized the fair distribution of work to maintain internal stability in the tribe. Rak knew that another tribe was definitely watching them, so he prepared in advance. A few days after they moved their base, they no longer encountered frogmen. During this time, they made extensive preparations to ensure the safety of the tribe. Nebula felt proud of this. He believed that few players could be more successful than him. The Lizardman tribe not only developed livestock farming, their housing and lifestyle were also rapidly evolving to adapt to the changing environment. Most fascinating was that they soon established the concept of writing. These characters were shared among tribe members and, combined with traditional hunting marks and symbols, they drew a primitive map. Rak also recorded the harvest of each person that day, which not only improved individual efficiency but also significantly increased food production. This change can be described as a qualitative leap. On the other hand, the locust population was also steadily growing, and now Nebula's insect territory had reached level 4. Nebula found it unbelievable, a development method he could not have imagined in his dreams. Insects on other continents are reproducing quickly. Should I try to benefit from this situation? Nebula wondered. Rak's abilities and the tribe's status were now above average, but this was just the beginning, because what happened next was going to be more dangerous than any crisis they had faced before. Just then, Yer came running to Rak in a panic. Frogmen have come to visit. Moments later, a group of frogmen appeared before Rak. Adhering to the principle of peaceful coexistence, Rak decided to personally go and welcome them. When he saw the frogmen, he couldn't help but frown, because he noticed that there was a lizard man among the frogmen. This made Rak immediately realize that the situation was not simple. Could they be coming to make peace? Upon arrival, the frogmen introduced themselves first. "I am Shinnon, son of the great tribal leader Alroy. We have no intention of opposing your tribe." Rak greeted them. "I'm tribal leader Rak. Our Lizardman tribe also has no intention of dealing with you. Why have you come to meet us?" Then, the frogmen explained their purpose. The Lizardman tribe had encroached on their territory. To this, Rak did not agree. He calmly said, "This place was originally a wilderness, with no marks or traces of frogman activity. If we truly encroached on your territory, I apologize for that. However, that is not the case, as we migrated from a distant place and could only temporarily settle here." Rak then shifted the conversation, complimenting, "It seems you are the ideal candidate to meet the requirements of the next leader, don't you think?" Shinnon was somewhat embarrassed by this sudden praise. Rakrak quickly grasped the situation through the conversation. As he had guessed, the frogmen's visit was not merely a simple visit. They were sent by their tribal leader to closely monitor the Lizardman tribe. What made Rakrak more suspicious was the presence of a Lizardman among the frogmen, which was very questionable. Rakrak thought, I need to carefully gather their information. Then, he proposed inviting the frogmen to the village for a detailed discussion and stated, let's celebrate our agreement. Shinnon was about to agree when a frogman behind him interrupted, forcing him to reluctantly refuse. Is that so? I cannot simply send off those who have done us Lizardmen a favor. Just a simple meal, that's all. Hearing it was just a meal, the frogman finally nodded and accepted the invitation. The scene shifts. Rakrak prepared a roasted whole sheep, warmly hosting them. He kept the frogmen around to clarify the relationship between the Lizardman and the frogmen and their true purpose for the visit. But Rakrak knew not to let the frogmen see his curiosity. To build rapport, Rakrak intentionally made conversation with Shinnon, asking, what are those feathers on you? These are feathers of the Cockatrice, a very dangerous creature. They are huge, venomous, and very fast. Curious, Rakrak asked, can they be killed with a spear? Hearing this, Shinnon scoffed and then ordered the Lizardman Owen to bring his bow and arrow. After receiving the bow and arrows, Shinnon instructed Owen to hang a target at a distance, preparing to demonstrate his archery skills. Rakrak saw through this, but also realized that this might be an opportunity. After the frogmen displayed their precise archery, Rakrak said, I'd like to give it a try. He deliberately shot the arrow off target, and as expected, Owen was called over to pick up the scattered arrows. Rakrak used the excuse of practicing archery to walk over and pick up the arrows, using this as an opportunity to have a one-on-one interaction with Owen. After contacting Owen, Rakrak found that Owen constantly emphasized their mutually supportive relationship with the frogmen, but it was precisely this deliberate statement that further confirmed Rakrak's suspicion. There was definitely something fishy going on. Even though Rakrak indicated to Owen, Lizardmen are stronger than frogmen, Owen repeatedly emphasized, without the protection of the frogmen, we cannot survive. Then, Rakrak said, forget the conversation we just had. If anyone asks, say we were discussing archery. The scene shifts. The frogmen thoroughly enjoyed the herb-treated lamb, praising it highly. Rakrak then mentioned, beef tastes even better. Shinnon agreed, it's been a while since we caught any wild buffalo. Rakrak smiled and said, we caught some alive. Hearing this, Shinnon paused. Seizing the moment, Rakrak proposed, we could trade them for bows and arrows. Shinnon quickly agreed, but just then, a warning noise came from behind. Immediately, Shinnon changed his tone. Our tribe members bear no hostility towards the Lizardmen. Look how well Owen gets along with us. Then, he called Owen to talk about his treatment in the Frogman tribe. Hearing this, Rakrak became more vigilant. Shinnon spoke about these matters in a relaxed tone, as if they had been prepared in advance. If Rakrak had not previously interrogated Owen carefully, he might now believe what he said. Time quickly passed, and after a brief conversation, the frogmen bid farewell to the Lizardman tribe. Before leaving, Shinnon patted Owen on the shoulder, but Owen appeared unusually frightened. All of this was observed by Rakrak, who realized this was not like an equal interpersonal relationship. The scene shifts back to the Frogman tribe. As expected, the frogmen began questioning Owen, demanding to know the contents of his conversation with Rakrak. It was just inquiries about bows and arrows, but a scar-faced frog clearly did not believe him and kicked Owen. Owen, enduring the pain, explained, if I hadn't said that, he wouldn't have believed us. That is true. That's why I acted like I couldn't tell him, and that he should pay fee if he wanted to learn. What did he say? He said it was a shame he couldn't give me anything right away and gave up asking. Shinnon agreed with this and praised Owen for his good performance. Then, the frogmen made Owen look at the people in prison on the island. Guarded closely. If you want them to live, then follow my commands. The new sacrifice has already appeared. Hearing this, Owen helplessly said, I will do as you say. Originally, when Owen's tribe arrived here, the frogmen issued a friendly invitation. Unexpectedly, it was a trap. Their tribe was thus subdued, their population reduced to less than 200, while the frogmen's tribe had as many as 1,500 people. This was mainly because the frogmen have a powerful deity, a huge two-headed serpent, that controls the frogmen. Owen mentioned the leader of the Blackscale tribe, who appeared to be a strong warrior, with about 600 people in his tribe. But Owen did not have confidence in their strength, as they did not even know how to use bows and arrows. Owen struggled internally. As long as they are sacrificed, we'll be able to live for a longer time. Please wait, my son. Daddy will make those Lizardmen come here. The scene shifts. A few days later, the frogmen did not expect that the Lizardman tribe could successfully capture wild buffalo and keep them enclosed. Rakrak suggested, trade them for bows and arrows, and you can take the buffalo back. Just then, Owen spoke, while we trade items, we can get to know each other better. After all, we don't know enough about the Blackscale tribe yet. He then invited Rakrak to visit the Frogman village, promising, if you come, we will provide more resources. The scene shifts. Rakrak was testing the bows and arrows he had made, but found that their range was only half that of the frogmen's. He understood that although their design was close, they naturally could not achieve the original's performance due to not knowing the specific manufacturing materials. As the visits from the frogmen became more frequent, Rakrak gradually realized realized that behind the frogmen's propagated peace, there actually lay some undisclosed motives. Under the guise of faith, they might be plotting something. The problem is, Rakrak still does not know their specific plans, so the Lizardman tribe must remain highly vigilant. Meanwhile, the Lizardman tribe made significant progress in herbal research, as there was a doctor in the tribe knowledgeable about herbs. Rakrak and Jail also began discussing Owen's situation, with Jail suggesting, perhaps we can give Owen a chance. I believe he is being coerced by the frogmen. On the other side, because Owen had not succeeded in inviting Rakrak to the frogman village, he was suffering punishment from the frogmen. Shannon signaled to Scarface to stop, saying, he can't die yet. Scarface, upon hearing this, shoved Owen away but simultaneously warned him to speed up the progress. The frogmen demanded that Owen complete the task quickly, as they planned to hold the ritual in advance. The plan of the frogman village was to lure the Lizardman leader and warriors to the village before the ritual and capture them all. They decided to act early because the frogman chief was gravely ill and could no longer afford to delay. This was a secret among the frogmen, but Shannon felt it wouldn't hurt to tell Owen. He mentioned a strange disease that caused intense itching all over the body. At first, a white membrane covers the skin, and as the disease worsens, the membrane spreads until the frogman can no longer breathe and suffocates to death. Owen was hearing for the first time that itching could be a deadly disease. He felt incredulous and was curious as to why Shannon would tell him this. He speculated that perhaps the frogmen were testing him. Then Owen said, we shouldn't let the Black Scale tribe know about this, but Shannon motioned for him to let it be, because you can't hide fire with paper. Immediately, Owen thought of a plan. He could tell the Lizardmen that this disease could also infect them. He proposed using some medicine to induce itching on their skin in order to confuse the Lizardmen. Upon hearing this, Shannon approved the plan and promised, if you succeed in luring the Lizardman leader out, we will unconditionally release your child. Meanwhile, Owen made a request. Could I bring some bows and arrows with me? It would make the offer seem more sincere. Though Shannon were somewhat reluctant, they eventually agreed. The scene shifts. The frogmen visited again, bringing many supplies, while the Lizardman tribe traded herbs in exchange. However, the frogmen said, this is still far from enough, and once again mentioned the faith of peace. Rakrak had long suspected their true intentions, and he made a request. I would like to have a separate conversation with Owen alone. Upon hearing this, Shannon agreed to his request. A moment later, Rakrak took Owen to a secluded place. Just as Rakrak had anticipated, Owen was still promoting the frogmen as very friendly toward them. Owen hoped that Rakrak would set aside his doubts and build trust with him. At that moment, a blue butterfly flew in and landed on Owen's head. Rakrak watched the scene and then said, there have been many suspicions and doubts between us, but it's time for all of that to end. Let me tell you everything about us, everything for the tribe. Rakrak squatted on the ground and drew some symbols with a stick. Owen, looking at these symbols, couldn't help but ask, what are these? These symbols are what we call letters. Each has its own meaning. For example, this symbol means refuse or no, while another symbolizes lie or fake. Owen curiously asked, can they be combined together? Of course, if you put these two symbols together, it means do not lie. In other words, it can also mean truthful. This explanation left Owen very confused. He asked, why don't you tell the frogmen this, but tell me instead? Rakrak, seeing the confusion in Owen's heart, explained, because of faith. Between the Lizardman tribe and the Frogman tribe, I'm more interested in the trust between you and me. Owen seemed reluctant and said softly, there's no need to differentiate between frogmen and lizardmen. But Rakrak interrupted him directly. From the beginning, I haven't trusted anything about the frogmen. I know this matter is very complicated. We understand those who are marginalized and expelled very well, because we have experienced the same as you. Hearing this, Owen appeared very hesitant and awkward, not expecting Rakrak to deduce everything. Seeing Owen's reaction, Rakrak understood that he had been shaken, as signs of faith began to appear. The scene shifts. At that moment, Shannon was praising Owen. Well done. The Lizardman tribe plans to visit our tribe. Scarface Frog chimed in. They are so foolish, actually inviting us to visit their tribe. Now we know the size and actual number of the Lizardman tribe. Unexpectedly, the actual number is half of what we had estimated during our scouting. There are only a little over 300 people. Shannon looked at Owen satisfied. All thanks to our great contributor. Tell me, what do you want? Owen spoke softly. I just need you to release my son. Scarface Frog obviously was reluctant. The chief won't agree. Shannon reassured. Don't worry, I will remember my promise. The scene shifts. Evening. At this time, Owen was caught in deep hesitation. He didn't know whether he should help the people of the Black Scale tribe. Even though Rakrak appeared confident, the number of frogmen was simply too great, and the Lizardmen didn't even know how to use bows and arrows, let alone the frogmen warriors' secret weapons. Owen kept telling himself, don't trust them, but deep down, his thoughts involuntarily revealed themselves. Rakrak, why do you trust me? I'm just a swindler. The scene shifts to the next day. Rakrak leads the tribe's warriors to the frogmen's tribe. Shannon immediately comes out to greet them warmly, saying, welcome. I hope our two tribes can exchange in friendship. Rakrak acknowledges Shannon's welcome, but the Lizardman tribe's warriors come fully armed, because we were worried about encountering monsters along the way. Shannon, although smiling, had already planned everything in his mind. mind. He planned to get Rakrak drunk at the feast and then kill him with a poison arrow. Rakrak looks around, searching for Owen. Shinnon points to a spot. He's over there preparing the feast. Owen is currently squatting on the ground, carving something. Rakrak notices that he seems to be marking the positions of the Black Scale Tribe's warriors. Then, Rakrak calls out to Owen. Owen greets Rakrak as usual and reminds him, once the Black Scale Tribe's warriors sit down, the banquet officially starts. This is an interesting meeting for peaceful exchange. Rakrak looks at the symbols on the ground, already understanding everything. He then puts on a bullhead mask, signaling to his warriors. The banquet begins. The Lizardman warriors were already prepared. In the next instant, their spears pierce through the Frogman archers. The Frogmen, completely unprepared for such a swift action by the Lizardmen, are instantly routed. Rakrak calmly commands, let none escape. In moments, most of the Frogmen's assassination squad is dealt with the rest scattering in retreat. Yer then reports to Rakrak. Next, the Frogmen will likely retaliate with bows and arrows. Don't worry, because we have already prepared for this. Then, Rakrak calls Owen aside, as there's an important task only he can complete. On the other side, Shinnon is furious, cursing Owen and his entire family. He did not expect Owen to turn traitor so quickly. Soon, the Frogmen rally their warriors on the other side, stating, the Lizardmen are at the end of their tether. We far outnumber them, and as long as we hold out until reinforcements arrive, victory will ultimately be ours. In an instant, arrows soaked in venom are shot directly at the Lizardmen, and even a scratch would cause agonizing death. However, the Frogmen do not know that the Lizardmen are already prepared. An army holding shields appears in front of the Frogmen. The Frogmen's arrows cannot penetrate these shields, and seeing this, Shinnon is momentarily stunned. He hadn't expected that all the arrows would be deflected by the Lizardmen's shields. These shields, meticulously crafted, couldn't even be penetrated by spears, let alone small arrows. Shinnon immediately ordered, keep firing arrows, stop them from advancing. But just then, a strange smell drifted over. Shinnon turned to see that thick smoke had already covered most of the sky, greatly reducing the accuracy of the Frogmen archers. It turned out, this was the task Rakrak had given to Owen, to sneak into the Frogmen's village, rescue the trapped companions, and set fire to the houses of the Frogmen village. After completing his task, Owen quickly returned to his companions, signaling them to join the resistance. Although the trapped Lizardman companions were clearly hesitant, Owen firmly said, this is your only chance. We must trust the Black Scale Tribe. They will definitely defeat the Frogmen. Meanwhile, when the Frogmen realized their village was under attack, they understood that other Lizardmen had also joined the rebellion. Shinnon had no choice but to retreat temporarily, but a nearby Frogman warrior obviously disagreed. We've already lost many warriors. Why retreat? Shinnon cursed internally. Idiot. If the tribe's heir is endangered, the entire tribe is doomed. Then, the warrior suggested, should we let the two-headed serpent god fight? Shinnon was clearly reluctant to use this trump card. Isn't there a more reliable method? On the other side, when Scarface saw the village on fire, he realized that a full-scale war with the Lizardman tribe had erupted. His subordinates reported to him, there are only about 15 people left with Shinnon. Scarface pondered for a moment and said, including us here, we still have 45 people. We still have a numerical advantage. He then ordered, let all soldiers coat their arrows with frog poison, ready to support Shinnon. Just then, a huge noise came from the bushes nearby, chilling the Frogmen. That noise can only be made by a monster, Scarface murmured quietly. In an instant, the Frogmen shot poison arrows in that direction. However, they were soon horrified. A huge drake appeared before them. The drake, Manon, blocked all the poison arrows, even swallowing them without harm. Before the Frogmen could react, Manon charged at them, biting and killing a frogman in one bite. Scarface reacted quickly, dodging Manon's attack, and then he ordered, throw the poison frogs. Everyone throw together. That's the only way to poison it. Manon precisely swallowed all the poison frogs in one gulp, crunching noisily as if enjoying the taste of chicken. Why did they throw away the poison frogs? If they wanted to kill Manon with poison, they clearly miscalculated. The answer was simple. Manon had received the blessing of the nameless beetle god, making the poison completely ineffective against him. This realization drove Scarface to complete despair, but there was no chance for him to turn the situation around now. Manon stared at him like prey, and in the next instant, Scarface fell. Everything went silent. On the other side, the Frogmen tried to launch a sneak attack on Rakrak from behind, but Rakrak showed no intention of dodging. With a single tail swing, he knocked the arrows down. Immediately, Yer rushed forward to finish off the Frogman, quickly dispatching one. Meanwhile, Owen's tribe members joined the battle as well. However, Rakrak found it strange that the Frogmen's leader, Alroy, had yet to appear. Looking at the entire battlefield, Nebula's lips curled slightly, thinking to himself, of course, it's because of me. It turned out that when Rakrak had decided to leave the sacred land, Nebula, 100 kilometers away from the Frogmen's village, had discovered a deadly mucus virus. This virus had a strong ability to spread and a high mortality rate. Most importantly, it only affected the mucous membranes of amphibians. Nebula used a group of wasps to successfully carry the virus into the Frogmen's village, and it quickly spread. After the outbreak, the Frogmen's leader, Alroy, disappeared. Alroy, mistakenly believing that sacrificing humans could cure the disease, captured many lizardmen, but it turned out that this had no effect on alleviating the illness. Now, Alroy was preparing to sacrifice the captured children again to the two-headed snake god, hoping to save his tribe and his own life. He requested that the god kill all the lizardmen. Meanwhile, Owen, exhausted, found Rakrak, his face frantic. Seeing this, Rakrak immediately asked, "What's the urgent matter?" Gasping for breath, Owen said, "Go to the small island in the middle of the lake. They're sacrificing children to the two-headed snake. That god might not cure their disease, but you have enough power to stop it." Upon hearing this, Rakrak said, "This needs careful consideration. All their manpower is on the island. If we rush there, we won't be able to withstand the frogmen's archery, and we may face an ambush in the water." Owen pleaded, "Please help me. My son is being used as a sacrifice." In an instant, Rakrak's gaze turned fierce. In anger, he punched Owen in the face, shouting, "You idiot! You should have trusted me. I don't believe in the god those clumsy frogs worship. I believe we can defeat it with our own strength. If that so-called god really shows up and attacks me, I'll tell you how to crush it. But why didn't you tell me earlier to save the children?" Despite Rakrak's anger, Jael was at a loss for a moment. If they had known Shunan's intentions earlier, they might have been able to devise a strategy. On the other side, under the frogman's summoning, the two-headed serpent finally appeared before them. The frogman knelt and shouted, "Great God, here, I offer my offerings. Please punish these black-scale lizardmen." From afar, Owen was watching all this, filled with despair. He knew time was running out. However, Rakrak firmly said, "We still have a chance. Although we don't have the geographical advantage this time and can only confront them head-on, we must make some sacrifices to save those children." Just then, a blue butterfly flew by, and Rakrak immediately signaled Owen to look up. "Do you believe in miracles?" As the butterfly danced, a colossal figure appeared before everyone. Rakrak immediately recognized it as the incarnation of the nameless beetle god. The great battle between the two-headed serpent and the mantis deity was about to erupt. When the frogman's leader summoned the two-headed serpent, he knelt and prayed, "God, please accept this sacrifice. Please kill all these black lizardmen." However, the two-headed serpent did not heed his prayer, which left the frogman's leader bewildered. Usually, it starts being insatiable from the sacrifices. Why this time? He looked up and was startled by the scene behind him. A giant mantis was coldly watching them, its oppressive presence breathtaking. What in the world is this? Could it also be a deity? In contrast, the two-headed serpent seemed tiny before the mantis. Feeling threatened, the serpent issued a deep warning growl. This mantis, named Sratus, was a creature created by Nebula. Using the crustacean's inner core and belief values previously obtained, he endowed it with life. Sratus appeared as a giant mantis, but at this point in time, almost no other player could create such a powerful creature as quickly as Nebula. The battle erupted. The two-headed serpent attacked, its sharp venomous fangs striking at Sratus, but Sratus easily caught them. The frogmen hiding under the serpent scattered in all directions. Even the frogman's leader nearly got crushed by the two-headed serpent. Then, the other head of the two-headed serpent also attacked, but before Sratus' sharp scythe, the serpent had no chance to defend itself. With a swing of the scythe, the serpent was split in two like chopping vegetables. Then, Sratus issued a hollow and deep voice. "A little water snake dares to call itself a god? You are just an animal. Now, I will sacrifice you to my master, to cleanse you of your sins." With his immense strength, Sratus easily tore apart the two-headed serpent. Thus, the snake god worshipped by the frogmen perished on the battlefield. Sratus' attributes were enough to crush the two-headed serpent. Seeing the serpent dealt with, cheers erupted from the black scale tribe, everyone's heart filled with gratitude towards the nameless beetle god. Watching Sratus' performance, Nebula felt very satisfied. It looks huge, but it can be stored in the summoning space, and the randomly added strength skills greatly enhance its scythe attributes. At the same time, Nebula gained another inner core, surprised at his own good fortune. This inner core had the ability to create a domain, but when he clicked yes, a message box informed him that he obtained a small area of seawater. However, he could not use it because the freshwater environment did not match the domain requirements. Nebula had to set aside the inner core for now, thinking someday it will be useful. On the other side, Alroy stood dumbfounded, completely unable to accept what had happened. He had not expected their two-headed snake god to be defeated so easily. In front of Sratus, all the frogman warriors turned into cowards, afraid to step forward. Sratus slowly turned its head, signaling to Nebula, "Master, the task is completed. Well done, you can rest now." In the next instant, Sratus disappeared before everyone's eyes, and all was calm. "Rakrak, you won't just sit and wait, will you?" The frogmen were sailing towards the upper village, and there was no longer any trace of frogmen on the island. "Today, we will achieve a perfect victory. Is there anyone willing to lead us to the frogmen's village?" Owen was the first to stand up, confidently stating, "I am fully capable of taking on this task." At that moment, a member of the grayscale lizardmen stepped forward and pleaded, "Please let us help you too." Tribal leader Rakrak. However, Rakrak responded, "This is a dangerous mission, and you are not warriors." The grayscale lizardmen firmly replied, "It is not only warriors who can kill frogmen. The frogmen have sacrificed our children and families to the two-headed serpent, and now we only seek vengeance." Rakrak saw their anger and then said, "Everyone has the right to be angry. worry. All who seek vengeance, I will stand with you. All the lizard men quickly crossed the lake, determined and focused on their objective. Fortunately, the children were all safe, and Owen finally reunited with his son. Seeing this, Rakrak finally felt relief. He then signaled to Ur, prepare the boats to send the children away, then led the Grayscale tribe around to the rear of the Frogman's village to confuse them. Upon hearing this, Ur immediately understood Rakrak's intentions. Your plan is to hit both sides at once? Correct. Once the Frogmen are drawn to you, I will lead the soldiers across the water to launch the attack. Ur asked with some concern, but is such a plan feasible? Don't worry, I've discovered another blessing from the god. Under the moonlight, our black scales appear like mist, capable of confusing the enemy's vision. This is their end. A moment later, the Frogman's village was in complete disarray. The villagers were frantically preparing to flee, but before Alroy could recover, the Lizardmen tribe launched their attack. Alroy had not expected the Lizardmen to arrive so quickly, and the Lizardmen's pike formation rendered the Frogmen's arrows ineffective, giving them no chance to react. Rakrak quickly confronted the Frogmen's tribal leader, Alroy, and coldly said, "This ends now." But Alroy was still deluded that the two-headed serpent would save him. "I have sacrificed so many. Great God, please save me." Rakrak ignored him, and with a thrust of his spear, Alroy's sinful life came to an end. "Your god isn't here anymore." Elsewhere, Shunin realized that the situation was lost. "Although we outnumber them and have poison arrows, I never expected the Black Scale tribe to be resistant to toxins. Poisoning is completely useless," Shunin muttered to himself. As he searched desperately for an escape, Rakrak quietly appeared behind him. "So, this is where you've been hiding." Upon seeing Rakrak, Shunin instantly collapsed to the ground, his face full of terror. Rakrak looked down at him from above and coldly said, "Stand up like a warrior, protect your last honor with your weapon, and fight me." Shunin, however, frantically bowed and begged for mercy, even trying to play the emotional card. "For the sake of our past friendship, could you let me go? I was also threatened by the two-headed monster." Seeing that Rakrak remained unmoved, he quickly added, "I can tell you the secret of the bows. I'll tell you all the materials needed." At these words, Rakrak showed some interest. "What materials?" Shunin sighed with relief and said with a fawning expression, "It's a tendon." Rakrak frowned and coldly asked, "What species of tendon is it?" Shunin immediately became evasive, his words faltering. Seeing his behavior, Rakrak seemed to have figured everything out. Memories flooded back. Earlier, when Shunin visited the Lizardman tribe, he had mentioned, "Only we know the materials for making bows, and Lizardmen can easily obtain them." But the Lizardman tribe had tried many materials and still couldn't complete the task. Now, Rakrak finally understood the truth. The Frogmen had killed hundreds of Lizardmen just to harvest their tendons to make bows. Back to the present, Rakrak remained silent for a moment, then opened the tent flap and coldly said, "Go, Shunin. We have no grudges. I'll honor our deal." Shunin froze for a moment, then turned and ran out, filled with joy at the thought of having just saved his life. Owen, witnessing all of this, asked with confusion on his face, "Are you really letting him go?" "It's okay. I just needed a moving target." Suddenly, a bowstring shot an arrow straight through his foot. The intense pain shot through his whole body, and Shunin collapsed heavily to the ground. At the same time, the Grayscale tribe rushed over. Shunin tried to struggle and escape again, but the Lizardmen decisively delivered a fatal blow. Thus, the war between the Frogmen and the Lizardmen was definitively concluded. A few days later, after several days of practice, Rakrak's archery skills had significantly improved, and the bows had also been greatly refined. However, there were still shortcomings. The bow would break if pulled slightly more than its capacity, despite the substitution of new materials for the bowstrings. If only there were materials to strengthen the bow arms. There are no stronger materials than this in the forest. Although the Frogmen also use this material, the bows cannot withstand the great strength of Lizardmen. It seems we should not limit ourselves to just this forest. Winter is approaching. If we want to feed the buffaloes, we must move some people to warmer places. Then, Rakrak inquired about the situation of the Frogmen's escape. Owen reported, "They have been mostly annihilated." "Is your target Alroy?" "No way. Alroy's body was damaged as much as Shunin's. He will be on someone's head like Shunin's skull or on your head. Come to think of it, when I was ambushing the Frogmen, just as Owen was about to speak, a disturbance nearby interrupted them." Jael curiously approached a child hiding behind a tree and asked, "Child, what are you doing here?" Jael's appearance startled the child. "Are you here to find Rakrak?" Meanwhile, something on the ground caught Jael's attention. She picked it up curiously. It was a rudimentary handmade wooden carving. Rakrak immediately recognized it as an effigy of their guardian deity. He carefully examined the small doll and then affirmed the child's work. "You've made it very beautifully." Hearing Rakrak's praise, a happy smile appeared on the child's face. "This is a gift for our great tribe leader." Owen gestured to Rakrak to accept it with peace of mind, adding, "The children in the village all like to make these crafts and use them for exchange. Are there many such carvings in the village?" "Yes, because the guardian saved us, so he is the idol of all the children." Rakrak also thought this was a good practice and signaled to Owen, "We can produce more of these, so everyone remembers the great guardian." At this moment, Rakrak remembered the words Owen had not finished saying. "It was inside the cave where they were hiding. I discovered something odd." Soon after, Owen led the others to the entrance of the cave. "This is was the entrance. The frogmen used it as a hideout. Owen felt that this place was very mysterious, suspecting that it hid some secrets. When Rakrak saw the mysterious patterns on the stone wall, he was also startled. He observed carefully and found that these hard stones were carved exquisitely, and he was also surprised to notice that these patterns very closely resembled the patterns on the backs of insects. Only Nebula knew that this was actually an ancient ruin. There are many types of ancient ruins. Some ruins provide ancient knowledge or uncover miracles. Some of these ruins have important functions, and in certain ones, you could even acquire magic or relics. These relics are often fixed in a special location due to their unique resources or mystical blessings. For the nomadic Lizardman tribe, whose current level of civilization is still low, the value of such relics might not be apparent. Nevertheless, Nebula was secretly praying that this was not the ruins of a demonic castle. As Rakrak pushed open the stone door, a dazzling light emitted from inside, and a deep, majestic voice sounded. "Who has awakened me? Stranger, welcome to the demonic world." They entered an ancient abandoned city and found a secret space within these ruins. In the center of the clearing stood several arch bridges tens of meters high, extending downward in a zigzag pattern. Should we consult the nameless beetle god? Such trivial matters should not trouble God. I believe we can resolve them ourselves. Suddenly, a mighty sound came from afar. In the passage below, countless eyes were staring at them. When the people saw clearly, they realized those were a group of enormous rats. Why are those rats crying so much? These should be nutrias. We've eaten them a few times on the road before, but typically nutrias are only about 60 centimeters long, while these in front of us are at least 1 meter long and could weigh tens of kilograms. Moreover, normal nutrias do not appear in groups, nor do they use their teeth to attack people aggressively. Rakrak realized that these rats were not ordinary and named them rat monsters. He speculated that these rat monsters might be guardians of the ruins. Rakrak immediately ordered everyone, prepare for battle. In the next instant, the rat monsters indeed launched a fierce attack. In front of the Lizardman tribe warriors' spears, the rat monsters quickly fell, and the remaining ones scattered in retreat. Rakrak looked at these enormous rat monsters and pondered, we should be able to eat these creatures. Perhaps we could domesticate them, just like the wild buffalo. If possible, I think fish farming could be feasible as well. Rakrak asked doubtfully, don't fish disappear on their own? He recalled the swamps and ponds he had lived near, where the fish gradually dwindled as they were caught and eventually disappeared. Owen refuted his view. When I lived with the frogmen, I know that in large ponds, this is not the case. Fish lay eggs and breed fry. During the breeding season, the frogmen even warned us not to fish. Just then, a warrior holding a rat monster's body suddenly screamed. Rakrak quickly turned around and asked, what's wrong? The warrior was clutching his hand in pain. My hand, it feels like it's been burned. I only touched it briefly and felt a sharp pain. At this moment, a sizzling sound surrounded the rat monster's body. Rakrak hesitated, then extended a finger and lightly touched the rat monster's body. Suddenly, a powerful force surged through his body, causing him an instant paralysis. Jael anxiously asked, are you alright? Are you hurt? Don't worry. It seems this creature can electrify upon contact. Only Nebula, observing from a distance, knew what this meant. This is exactly what I was hoping not to see, a demonic castle. He thought to himself, if Rakrak breaks through this ancient ruin to the end, there is a high probability that he will obtain demonic power. Obtaining magical properties does not immediately make you a wizard, but the magic properties get stronger with each generation. We can create wizards in future generations, but there is a problem. In Lost World, divinity and magic are in conflict. According to the lore of the game, magic originates from ancient evil, not from God. High-level wizards create their own forces without relying on gods. If the number of people affected by this increases, there will be a penalty for building faith. It's not that here is no way to overcome it, but if you get it early in the game, there are too many variables. Slowly, the demonic ruins will reveal their true colors and tempt you. Meanwhile, a creature resembling a devil fish suddenly appeared in front of Rakrak. Visitor, do you desire that kind of power? If you are willing, I can bestow it upon you. However, Rakrak did not immediately respond to its proposal. Jael reminded him from the side, your condition is not good right now. We should go back and make thorough preparations first. Let's take the rat monsters back with spears first. Rakrak noticed that he was the only one who could see this mysterious creature. The devil fish explained, I am the guardian spirit of this place, visible only to those of great power. You only need to think it, and I can hear your conversation. Rakrak then asked, what power did you mention just now? Nebula was also observing all this, hesitating whether to remind Rakrak. If I don't remind him, given his personality, he will surely reach the end of the ancient ruins. But when Nebula checked Rakrak's data again, he discovered a new unique attribute that had appeared, trickery. This ability could help Rakrak identify others' deceptive actions and increase his alertness. Nebula speculated that this ability might have appeared after Rakrak defeated the Frogman tribe. Therefore, he decided to wait and see what would happen next. At this moment, the devil fish was explaining the power it had mentioned. Its name is electricity, a power that can melt living beings and release a brightness like the sun. I can bestow it upon you. Rakrak, upon hearing this, expressed his gratitude. If you are willing to give it to me, I would be glad to accept it. However, However, the devil fish changed its tune. There is a condition to obtain it. Rak immediately frowned and said coldly, "Why didn't you mention any conditions before?" Seeing this, the devil fish clearly panicked and hastily added, "The condition is simple. You just need to possess enough strength. When making a deal, conditions should be stated first. You need to clearly tell me what you can offer and what you hope to get from me." The devil fish appeared even more nervous and kept apologizing. "Sorry, I didn't explain it clearly. What are the conditions to obtain this power? If there are any more secrets, this will be our last conversation." Rak waited for the spirit to elaborate further. "I can fly freely in this space, but I cannot leave here. Only by breaking free from these bindings can I regain my freedom. What needs to be done to break the seal? It's simple. Just defeat the creature guarding my seal below, and you will gain the power." "Is the power you mentioned the same as the electricity those rat monsters have?" "Yes, but the electricity in their bodies is minimal. You can train it by continually using this power, making it stronger, and even able to call down lightning from the sky. This growing power can rival that of gods. Not just you, your family members can also gain this power. Although your achievements can't be directly inherited, your descendants, if they keep training, might become even stronger than you." Hearing this, Rak was astounded. He couldn't help asking, "If such powerful abilities exist, why are you still trapped here?" "Because my power is too strong. People always stay away from dangerous things. If they can't stay away, they bind it." "Well, then, you just admitted yourself to be a dangerous entity. What are you hiding? Or is the downside of this power greater than its benefits?" "Stop lying. I warn you, if you continue to hide, I will go back now, completely seal the entrance to this cave, make sure no one ever finds this site, and warn my tribe's descendants never to enter here." The spirit suddenly panicked, and Nebula noticed that its intelligence wasn't as high. For those entering the demon ruins, resisting the spirit's temptation isn't easy. As expected, Rak's steadfastness was due to his newly acquired abilities. "In the distant past, I was a being that ruled this world. I originated from an ancient demon. Our existence has been forgotten by people. Even the gods do not remember us. I can't even remember my own origins. When I regained consciousness, I found myself trapped here." Hearing this, Rak said indifferently, "You too are a pitiable creature. This kind of mysterious power easily leads people astray. Because its origin is unknown, people believe the power belongs only to them. But in reality, they just happen to acquire it. Once they think this way, they tend to look down on those without power." Rak found it somewhat hard to understand, but agreed anyway. He thought about the previous blue scale leader and Alroy. "I suppose they were like that. Demon magic also turns people into that, right?" "Correct, but my power itself is neither good nor bad. Those who possess power simply decide by chance." Rak began to ponder what would happen if he acquired this power. He realized that this demonic power seemed different from the power granted by gods. The power of gods is given only to those chosen by the gods, and it is the gods who decide how it should be used. If a person is deemed unworthy of such power, others may become envious or even hostile. As power grows, people might begin to question or even despise the gods. Rak understood why this kind of power is considered dangerous, but he also felt its strength and allure. It could also enhance the tribe's overall combat effectiveness. If this power could be restricted by conditions, then it would be even more beneficial for the tribe's development. Rak agreed to the spirit's request, but set several conditions. Although power can spread indiscriminately, if needed, one can also gain power through a ritual. If both these things are true, couldn't we also choose not to distribute the power indiscriminately, but rather to certain chosen individuals? Why do that? That's not the point. If people think it is a divine gift, then from that moment, it is. Those chosen will believe the God granted them this power and will naturally develop faith and devotion. Thus, people will not defy the God. The spirit tried to object to Rak, but was at a loss for words. What Rak said was also consistent with the system of Lost World. If those who possess demon magic think the power is coincidental, then the faith points they gain would be penalized. However, if they mistakenly think it is a divine gift, it could actually bring more faith points. Then, Rak looked at the spirit and set a second condition: "You must also believe in our God." Hearing this, the spirit was stunned. "I am a demonic spirit, an existence older than your gods. None of that matters. What matters is what you choose to do next." The spirit slowly calmed down, but still felt that the gods would not like demonic spirits. "Don't think of our God with your standards. The nameless beetle god seems to be generous, and you seem useful. Will your God accept me if you accept the conditions? Actually, I'm not trapped in these ruins, but I rule them. That nutria, they were simply an attempt to break you down. It was a test to see if you qualify, but I still tricked you. Aren't you mad? I see. I understand. So you're forgiven. In such a damp and dark place, if you live with those rat monsters, I would get a bit eccentric too. You should go out and see more beautiful sights. What's your name?" "I'm Rak." "Good. The test is over. If your God accepts me, this ability will be yours. It's your choice. If you can change your faith, you'll find that the power you hold will no longer be bound by past mistakes, but can serve a new future." At that moment, a prompt appeared. "One of the demonic spirits wishes to be your subordinate. If you accept this, you will receive demonic domain, electricity. Do you accept?" Without hesitation, Nebula pressed the yes button. This is the only way to overcome penalties and acquire magic. "Well done, Rak. Perhaps meeting you is lucky for both of of us. Thus, Nebula acquired demonic domain, electricity. 9 years later, a tower made of buffalo bones stands in the wilderness, visible from a great distance. This bone tower, built on the foundation of the old tower first constructed by Rakrak, not only symbolizes the faith in the nameless beetle god, but has now become a milestone for the Lizardman tribe. A Lizardman is telling a human the story of their tribe. After listening, the man curiously asked, "But what does the nameless beetle god have to do with the thunderstorms? What color is lightning?" "It is blue." As the two were about to continue their conversation, a noise suddenly came from a distance. "Well, we will have to end our talk here. It looks like we have uninvited guests coming. Those are gnolls. I have a question. Do they look like Saukate's people?" The man paused for a moment, then answered, "They are defenseless, lack vigilance, and they are also poorly armed. To me, they are just wandering gnolls." Upon hearing this, Owen lowered his head, his expression complex, but with a hint of relief. "I think so as well. Then shall we break their spirit?" And at this moment, the completely unaware gnolls had no idea that danger was closing in. Suddenly, an arrow sliced through the air, appearing in front of the dog tribe members. Seeing this, one of the underlings immediately shouted, "We're under attack." Before they could react, a bolt of lightning struck from the sky, instantly enveloping them in a powerful electric current. "Damn it, it's the Lizardman tribe." Seeing this, Owen's face showed a look of satisfaction. The dog tribe members frantically fled the scene. Owen turned and smiled, saying, "Just to clarify, my name is Owen." Hearing this, the human was stunned. "I had no idea you were such an important figure." Then, Owen pulled out a stick from his chest. The end of the stick was rounded, and it was hollow inside. He gently exhaled, and a puff of smoke emerged from his mouth. The human finally understood. It was a pipe and tobacco, a ritual tool used by the chosen black-scale lizardmen. Owen noticed the human's puzzled expression and said lightly, "If you have something to ask, go ahead." "So," the human asked, "with such powerful abilities, why do you choose to live alone in this wilderness under such harsh conditions? This is something I can't understand." Owen exhaled a puff of smoke calmly and replied, "There's a reason for that. I am a man with a deep burden of sins." This made the human even more puzzled. "But the Lizardmen hold you in high regard. I have betrayed many of my kind, but someone showed me a path to redemption. By telling stories and recording writings, spreading the faith of the nameless beetle god, and the name of the tribal leader Rakrak. This is the way of atonement I have chosen." The human pondered. "Even if you don't do this, in this wilderness, no one is unaware of the existence of the black-scale tribe, especially Rakrak." Then, Owen curiously asked, "Are you also a wanderer?" The human scratched his beard and answered, "I'm not a wanderer. I come from Automation." Automation is an isolated valley, located at the southwestern end of the wilderness. It is also a region closely monitored by both the gnolls and the black-scale lizardmen. "So you are an envoy from the domain of Automation?" "Yes, I am here to visit the black-scale lizardmen and deliver a message from the king of Automation." "So you are our guest." I was disrespectful. After saying this, Owen blew a whistle, and a 2.5-meter tall creature came running from the distance. The human was shocked. "Is that a cockatrice?" "You're only half right. This is a hybrid of cockatrice and a chicken." The human was stunned, not understanding how the Lizardmen tribe managed to achieve such interspecies hybridization. Then, Owen said, "I will personally take you to meet tribal leader Rakrak, but in return, you must listen to my stories the entire way." The scene shifts, and a formidable army of Lizardmen is advancing forward, with their leader, Rakrak, at the front. Just then, a messenger boy hurriedly ran up to Rakrak and said, "The one-armed elder says his life is in imminent danger." Hearing this, Rakrak's expression tightened, showing great concern. He knew there were many matters he needed to discuss with the elder. Thus, Rakrak immediately ordered, "Stop the procession, set up camp here." With his command, the warriors conveyed Rakrak's orders to the other lizardmen. Watching the solemn expression on Rakrak's face, Jael approached him with concern and asked, "What has happened to you?" Rakrak told her about the situation with the one-armed. Jael also felt very sad after hearing this and said softly, "This is bound to be a sorrowful night." The one-armed lizard man had made many contributions to Rakrak and the black-scale lizardman tribe. Everyone in the tribe respected him greatly and gave him many titles: Elder, One-Armed Lizard Man, Guide, Stargazer, but most often he was called the Elder. A moment later, Rakrak walked into the one-armed lizardman's tent and quietly asked about his condition. The doctor sighed and apologized. "I have done all I could." The one-armed slightly opened his hazy eyes and said softly, "I remember now. I have done many things in my life. I have traveled many places, learned many things. Because I was missing an arm, I wandered for a long time until I met you, tribal leader. However, every lizard man will have this day. It's the natural law. There's only one way to cure this disease: sleeping forever." Rakrak sat silently by the bed, listening to him speak. Suddenly, the one-armed smiled. "So, I decided to indulge in my last journey. I wanted to steal the time of the busiest person in the tribe. Time is precious, isn't it?" Rakrak smiled too. "That's an interesting topic, but I don't think this is your last joke." Then, the one-armed asked meaningfully, "I have a question for you, and you are the only one qualified to answer it. What happens after we die?" Rakrak was silent for a moment, his brow slightly furrowed, as he was also unsure of the answer. "People often say that when you die, you will sleep forever. Do you think so too? Will we really sleep forever? Why do you think I am qualified qualified to answer this question. I think this way. The nameless beetle god taught us when we were lost. So, I believe that even if we die, he will surely guide us. Do you think this goes against the will of God? When we are lost, the nameless beetle god will guide us. Even after death, he will surely continue to guide us. Hearing Rakrak's answer, the one-armed showed a satisfied smile and then asked, then what do you think that place will be like? When we meet God, will it start with an awkward greeting? Rakrak, with his arms crossed, smiled and said, I'm not sure, but I think it won't be that boring. There will be a vast field where you can run as you wish. In this space, every step you take will make a slight creaking sound. The tip of your tail will joyfully swipe through the grass. There will be a giant rock where you can lie down to rest. The weather is usually good, but it wouldn't be fun if it was always the same. So sometimes it's cloudy, sometimes it rains. And there will also be a beautiful river. The one-armed, filled with anticipation, asked, is there really such a place? If possible, I hope to have a home there to rest, because I don't want to live in a tent. This elder has grown tired of being constantly on the move, and a tent means moving to another place again. I want to find a place to settle down. Rakrak looked up at the starry sky and said, we will get there one day, and I suppose God will take the stars with them too, because they can help us find our way home. Just then, Rakrak saw the guidance of the unnamed beetle god. A blue butterfly gently landed on the back of his hand. Do you see it? Rakrak asked softly, but at this moment, darkness clouded the one-armed lizardman's vision. His sight was blurry. Rakrak immediately became anxious. I have one more gift for you. The one-armed lizardman smiled weakly and said, what trick are you playing now? Are you gonna decline my gift again? As the one-armed lizardman's last breath touched the blue butterfly, it flapped its wings and flew away. Rakrak gently shook the one-armed lizardman's body, softly calling his name. The blue butterfly flew out of the tent, continuing towards the sky. Dusk gradually fell, and the wilderness was silent. Finally, the blue butterfly landed on another hand. What happens when you die in the lost world? Nebula knew the answer to this question well. The conditions to create the afterlife had been completed. Would you like to create an afterlife? Nebula clicked yes without hesitation. In the conditions of level, resources, and faith being met, players can advance their rank. This phase is called demigod, and they can create their own little world. The world after death is a very important element. When combined with a carefully designed worldview, it increases the player's chances of winning. The concept of heaven is commonly used alongside hell. If hell is the only destination after death, then there is no reason to believe in gods. Punishment should complement rewards, conveying a message of upholding morals and ethics. It could also serve as a training ground for warriors, as souls trained in the afterworld could also be sent back to the surface. However, currently, it is difficult for players to utilize the knowledge or power possessed by souls, as this requires a significant amount of faith points. But as the game progresses to later stages, souls become very helpful to players. There's no need to rush at the beginning. Many things are still in their initial stages. At this moment, Nebula is considering how to expand this little world and subsequently names it the Primordial Grassland. He then scatters all the souls across the Primordial Grassland. Hundreds of souls turn into blue wandering butterflies, landing on the prairie. These spirits, believing themselves to be butterflies once they land on the grass, remember that they were once lizardmen and revert to their previous forms. But in the Primordial Grassland, they bear no scars, no fatigue, and no deadly diseases. The lizardmen close their eyes to see if all this is a dream or reality, almost falling asleep beneath them. Just as Rakrak said, it's a vast grassland. Although there are no stone-built houses, he is quite satisfied. I suppose I don't need a house or anything. He looks up at the clear sky, his heart filled with peace and joy. This is perhaps the best gift. Looking out over the endless grassland, he recalls his last conversation with Rakrak. That talk seems like a dream, but is also very real. Now, the title one-armed no longer suits him. Stargazer might be better. Meanwhile, he notices other lizardmen lying on the grass. They are facing the sky with their eyes closed, seemingly not yet awake. The Stargazer wanders around, unsure whether he should wake them. They seem to be sleeping soundly, so waking them seems somewhat impolite. Among the other lizardmen, the Stargazer sees a few familiar faces. He recognizes one as one of the bravest warriors from a migration they once had, which was ambushed by goblins. Rakrak had split his forces to counterattack the goblins, not expecting a sneak attack from the middle. At that time, it was mostly the elderly and children here, and the one-armed could do nothing. In that critical moment, a young lizard man bravely stood up. The one-armed had taught him how to count, and this young warrior decided to trade his life for the survival of more. His heroic sacrifice was heart-rending because if he thought it necessary, he would even defy the leader's orders. This was a scene no one wanted to see. For those warriors who never came back, Rakrak was very angry. He believed that perhaps he should not have taught them math. Warriors who are good at counting actually disobey my orders. They thought trading one life for two was good arithmetic, and Rakrak could only vent his frustration, unable to do anything else. The Stargazer observed the sleeping warrior, not waking him. His deeds had inspired many, and simply seeing him again brought joy to the Stargazer. A breeze swept through the grassland, snapping the Stargazer back to reality, suddenly filled with doubt. Do gods really exist in this place? At that moment, he saw a lizard man hiding behind a tree. He shouted loudly at the figure, then stood up and chased chased after it. But when he reached the tree, the figure had vanished. The stargazer continued to follow the trail, quickly spotting glimpses of the figure between the trees. He pursued the traces until he came upon a cottage deep in the forest. Cautiously, he approached, driven by curiosity. At that moment, the stargazer's mind was filled with questions. Why would a god choose the Lizardman tribe? Is it because lizardmen are superior to other races? Or because gods are merciful? Or perhaps because we are useful? What happens if one day we are no longer useful? These questions remained unanswered. He remembered Rakrak saying that perhaps it was all just coincidence, yet it was the best outcome possible under the given circumstances. The stargazer agreed with Rakrak's perspective. With these thoughts, the stargazer entered the center of the room, where an astronomical telescope caught his attention. It was his first time seeing such a device, but instinctively he quickly learned how to use it. He adjusted the telescope, looking through the lens, and saw the stars clearly for the first time. Do stars really look like this? He continued to observe until he was certain this was the ultimate form of stars. The stargazer gazed at the starry sky, thinking, I guess I need to recalculate the trajectories of stars, because what I knew before was just superficial knowledge. He pondered how this knowledge could greatly assist the living lizardmen. However, since one cannot return after death, why would a god create such a place? Just to make an old lizardman happy? The stargazer knew it wasn't just that. He caressed the mechanical device of the observatory, thinking to himself, the god did his best. He wouldn't do anything without reason. This knowledge will surely be useful in the future. Nebula was pleased with the stargazer's understanding. The world after death is not just a resting place for the dead. It significantly impacts the values of those who believe in gods. If warriors enter the small world, their tribe might dream of Valhalla. If scholars enter, it could lay the groundwork for technological advancements. So far, Nebula's creation of the small world had a perfect start. The afterlife had to start functioning properly, as the Klipdir tribe had displayed more advanced steel technology than the Lizardmen, and even tamed fierce saber-toothed tigers. These technological forces and actions were highly unusual. Nebula speculated that behind the Klipdir tribe, there must be the involvement of other players. However, before going to war with other players, Nebula needed to be well prepared. After 9 years of development, Nebula had accumulated enough resources, and it was time to start a new chapter. Now, it's finally time to confront other players.